This week, we are talking about executive orders, more of them on the way, this time requiring truck drivers to speak English. 100 days of Trump's presidency, some of the highlights, lowlights, and all of it in between. As well as we have a new prime minister in Canada, ladies and gentlemen. Texas news, we'll be jumping into that. Welcome to Conrad's new segment, Weekly Update. Starting it off, 100 days of Trump's presidency has arrived today, where he held a press conference and highlighted all of the accomplishments so far. Obviously, one of the looming downsides of his presidency is the tariffs, and the GDP of the United States has actually decreased 0.3%, which is the first time in about 3 years where the economy has not grown. But that's okay because the Trump's tariffs are here to save us all so that we do not need to pay federal income tax. Let's hope that goes into effect. We have a new prime minister in Canada. Mark Carney was elected as the new prime minister as Justin Trudeau had been relieved of his duties or stepped down. And the new hunt for the prime minister, while he stepped in, Mark Carney stepped in his replacement, but he was officially elected the new prime minister of Canada yesterday. A new Ukrainian mineral deal is set to be signed today. A representative from Ukraine has flown into the United States, past Parliament in Ukraine to sign a new minerals deal. Again, this would allow the United States to set up a stronger presence in Ukraine with business, as well as militarize and help them in case of more Russian attacks. I know I mentioned it at the very beginning, but an executive order signed by Donald Trump making it a necessary thing for truck drivers to speak English. That's right. It was a law that Obama had passed that did not feel the necessity for truck drivers to speak English. Trump is reversing that and requiring all truck drivers now to have a strong grasp of the English language speaking as well as writing. Moving on to Texas news. Texas school voucher. This has been big. Has passed the Senate and is up on Governor Abbott's desk for signing. Basically, what that does is allow residents of Texas to choose which elementary school, middle school, and high school outside of the district's ISD that their children can attend to. And then lastly, sports related, we recently just wrapped up the NFL draft. It was a very exciting time, especially for Seahawks and Cowboys. Cowboys put together quite a draft. So did the Seahawks. Some winners and losers to that we can get into, as well as the NBA playoffs, which are proven to be a very, very, very exciting time. Gentlemen, let's jump into some of the topics. Talk about what's going on in the world today.
Okay. I'll give it to George first.
No, I won't talk about politics because I am geometrically in the opposite of that. I don't wanna jump into that. I don't even have time right now to get pissed. So I won't engage into politics this weekend.
I think the tariffs. There's so many ways that companies can work to make whatever. I mean, in the end of the day, some price rise will happen. I believe there must be a plan behind it all. I don't think people are very stupid just going about it, and of course there's different opinions and people may think it is, but I see a lot of, like, for example, there is one supplier here that they say, hey, we are changing all of our productions from China to somewhere else. And I don't know if that's the case, if you're like, okay, you're still manufacturing in China, but doing the final touches and putting boxes and whatever it is in different countries to be able to ship it out to the US. right? I don't know. There's so many ways that companies can set up their own distribution channels in the U.S., which could bring more business to the U.S. and probably that's the strategy. We don't know what we don't know. And having said all that, I think price increases are coming, and if there is federal taxes or not, it's still taxes to be paid. Tariffs are taxes, as and George doesn't want to talk about it, but he did mention that previously. And I think, in the end of the day, is a battle. It's geopolitics and just measuring and who has more power or something like that. So
I feel like the United States has moved business too far offshore, and businesses aren't set up here in the United States like it was 40, 50 years ago.
it's not easy to set up a factory and then you start manufacturing products.
No,
Nevertheless,
exactly. And I mean, it's not an easy thing. Two, there's a lot of regulations and and processes that you have to go here in the United States to get set up. So making it easier is ultimately the goal, to bring manufacturing back into the United States, to create jobs, to create long-term opportunities for citizens, right? I get it. I get where a lot of that Trump's tariffs are.
I think there is also a factor of like, okay, so there is this country that is becoming very powerful because everything is being manufactured there.
Correct.
So by doing these kind of moves, I don't know. I haven't really analyzed it all, but it could be, hey, just because today I had a conversation with the sales rep of a company, said, no, we're moving all of our production somewhere else, which I know for a fact that just lying, they're not really moving 100% of the production somewhere else. It's still being manufactured in China, but maybe finishing touches of a product is being done somewhere else. And then it's like, for example, if you import unfinished floor to the US and then you do the finish over here, and then that becomes a US floor. You know what I mean? US made floor. But it's not really 100% made. Nevertheless, by shifting, part of it to all the countries that might be around, it may distribute that power. Hey, giving more power to Taiwan, to South Korea, to India, somewhere that in Asia, Japan and whatnot, so that it distributes a little bit off China, for example. If that's really the goal that the president has right now, that means the balance of that country is like, hey, now instead of getting all the money, I have to channel the money through a different country, that I have to create agreements and so forth, but you have to leave profits on those countries, because if not, the operation is not going to be done. It might not bring all the jobs to the US, but at least it slow the growth, right, of in this particular case China. So it might not be like making America stronger by making it strong, like a stronghold in here, but making all the others weak is also a tactic. I don't know because I'm not on that realm,
Right.
But I see something like that happening.
For sure. Yeah, there's definitely some nuances to it. I thought what was really interesting was the executive order to make all truck drivers, semi-truck drivers, speak English. Now, the reason that I find it very interesting is obviously just recently here on the 35, and I don't know if you've driven on the 35 at all, but obviously with the construction that's going on, it is an absolute madhouse. And I have seen
I have to say something about it.
Tell me.
We've had 4 accidents.
Major. Well, this isn't
major.
Just, yes,
major accidents in the last
fatality.
3 weeks.
Correct.
And 3 of them with fatalities, right?
Correct.
So I don't think it's down to the language. But nevertheless, if you move to a country that the language is English or Portuguese, Spanish, Arabic, or whatever the language is, you do have to make an effort to speak that language.
So, and I do have to say that personal experience here, when I was down in Houston for our week-long vacation for spring break, we were driving, and I forget which road it was, but from Houston to San Antonio. I was going about 85 down the freeway, and I was getting passed in the fast lane. Mind you, I'm in the middle lane, and it's a 3-lane highway. Semi-trucks are supposed to be in the middle lane to slow lane. But I was getting passed in the fast lane and watching this semi-truck change multiple lanes to go around other semis or cars with license plates from Mexico.
I see that happening, yes.
And it happens far too often. And
Yes.
it's just, and you're going, okay, so this semi-truck driver that has, because we were bringing up that Cybertruck point last time where you have to have a special license to drive something of that magnitude. Recklessly driving, in my case, of going 100 miles an hour with an 18-wheeler, cutting in and out of fast lane traffic, is reckless, in my opinion. I mean, it was not a safe driving environment, and I know I did not feel safe. My wife definitely didn't feel safe. It was like, get over and let this semi-truck pass us in the fast lane, where a semi-truck is not supposed to be on Texas roads. They're supposed to be in the middle and slow lane. There's no need for them to be going 100 miles an hour. Something that weighs tons. And we're in,
so many different variances to that. And would that be pressure? What would that be? It's like necessity of getting faster to a place. Is that police work? And I to be honest with you, it's 75. I put on my cruise control 78, and I'm giving way all the time to people.
Yeah.
I don't go more than 2 or 3 miles more than the sign says. If it's 45, I do 46, 47 because there is a little bit wiggle room in the clock of the car itself. And it depends on the size of the wheels and whatnot. So I see, and I do travel a lot because, not travel a lot, I do drive a lot on the road because I have to go and see customers and whatnot. And we do jobs in San Antonio, we do jobs in San Marcos, we do jobs everywhere, Lago Vista, Thrall, Taylor, whatever it is, right? And you see this kind of behavior from big trucks are really going into the fast lane to overtake. I do understand that, and
well, it's illegal in Texas. Texas semi trucks are not supposed to be driving in the fast lane.
Yeah. So would it be more police work that's needed and then stop these people? I don't know. Is that pressure? Because it wasn't like that, 3-4 years ago. I think maybe even more than that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that is. I just think, there's been. I know people that avoid I-35.
I do.
Yeah.
I'm one of those persons where if I can, I will avoid 35 as much as possible.
Because
especially right now because of the construction.
There's a lot of construction,
Jesus
but
Christ.
even in places like you're saying, like going to San Antonio, there's no construction there. If you go past Austin, the South Austin, and then there is a little bit of a construction in Kyle, New Braunfels, Kyle area there, but it's not a lot. You know what I mean? It's okay, and it gets, but yes, there is a lot of danger on the roads now, and they will understand the signs. You know what I mean? To be a truck driver, you have to pass a test, right? So it's not like an easy test. Yeah.
So let me tell you something. I'm gonna just give my 2 cents here. I hate executive orders. I think it's not Obama's, Trump's. It doesn't matter. I think
you mentioned that before.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's just an abuse of power. Autocratic governments do that all the time. If you pick up history, it's just a behavior autocracies. So I don't want it Obama telling if they can or cannot, or Trump saying they can or cannot. I am for freedom, right? So I believe the market regulates. The problem is the punishment. We need stricter or restricted. If it puts lives in risk, I think there should be harder punishment. And then these guys would be, like in China, they are doing that now. This one, a friend of mine is in China right now at this, right in a convention there. He says no way you can drive at 78. No way you can drive at 78, because if you are at 78,
Busy roads over there, though. It's crowded. A lot of people.
yeah,
a lot
and
of
then
cars.
it's like they have fines per second. It's ridiculous, and then that affects your credit score, your social score, affects a lot of things. So I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying that I don't think it's a problem of language. I don't think per se Mexicans or Brazilians or Americans are better drivers, but I think Americans are more educated because of the education. Many generations of punishments that don't happen in Brazil and Mexico, for example. They come here, they drive that. You can see the Californians come in here and they do the California stop. Chip, and go. Man, Tamiris, my wife, she learned how to drive here in Texas. So she's the perfect driver. She's the perfect driver. She stops, she looks to the left, to the right, to the left again, and then she goes. You can tell that people, get uneasy because of that, because she spends 2 seconds, for Christ's sake, 2 seconds. So I think it's not about language. It's not about creating laws for that. The market needs to regulate with the minimum government telling, hey, there are punishments for that. And those guys would be naturally eliminated from the market,
And that's a valid point too,
But
George.
China is a dictatorship or whatever it is, right? Do you know what I mean? So
it is autocracy.
Yeah, autocracy. So you used China as an example there. It's much harsher because the government has much more power, on top of people. I do not want to see that over here in the U.S.
No, I don't command that for sure.
Right.
I think
I don't want to see that. So
Right.
just to clear, because George does not want that. I don't want that. George does not want that. He just mentioned it.
Yeah, you just wanted
so
more
how,
freedoms. Yeah, you said that.
Yeah, and how it can get, how complicated it can get. But at the same time, I don't think people here are more educated. But at the same time, I see people really not using. I think drivers here are not good, and I'm telling you this because somebody's they stop right they have to turn right or left or whatever it is. They wait and wait and wait until they turn and move immediately to the left hand lane, because 3-5 miles away they're going to turn left. No. You turn on the right lane. You don't have to wait that much. You turn on the right lane, and then you negotiate. You have 2 miles to negotiate to move lanes. So people here do not drive well. Do not. And I see that all the time. I drive a lot. And then I see that all the time. People do not know how to drive. Unfortunately, they think that, hey, I'm going to turn left next in 2 miles. And I have to be on the left lane. No, you don't have to be on the left lane. You have to be on the right lane. The right lane is the lane to drive. The left lane is to overtake or to turn left when you need to. But you only do that, when it's time.
And Hilton, and I want to say absolutely, Texas drivers are absolutely terrible. Coming from California had
not
terrible,
Texas only,
But I mean, I grew up in California. At least California drivers are better. And I don't know if it's an education wise, but you know what I think it is California, especially on the freeways. I would see at least 2 or 3 chips, California Highway Patrol. You had police monitoring the highways constantly. So you're not fucking around on the highways. You are constantly obeying the laws. You're going, oh shit, okay, I got cops coming up, motorcycles or cruisers. You saw a police presence. Here, it is a free for all, and I feel like too much liberty is happening here in Texas. I think there's a balance. Like you're saying, I think there is a balance that needs to happen where too much freedom allows for complete and utter chaos where people are abusing the power, but authoritarian aspect of monitoring every little, if you go over the speed limit by 1 mile an hour, that's going to affect your social credit score type of thing is a little too much. There has to be a right balance. And I don't think there's a balance here in Texas. I think it's way too much freedom, especially on the highways, which is leading to these accidents.
Mm-hmm.
And then to be honest, I put I used to have the toll road on my car 7 years ago. I put it back. So now, to get faster to where I have to go, because I need to drive much more now. And I'm driving the road says normally highways are 75, right? The speed limit in here, and I put 78, right? And so many cars just fly by, and I don't drive on the left, or I don't hog on the left lane, and then people fly by 80, 85, bing, bing, bing. It's like, man, this is not right. I mean, it's okay, you need to get faster, it's an empty road and whatnot, but at the same time, it's 75 is already a good speed,
But one police car, one highway patrol Texas Ranger.
But I can see now on the highways, police cars. I can see that now, and I was telling Dylan about it. It's like, oh no! So I gotta. Because Dylan also likes to go 80. But it's like, hey man, you may need to go 78. Just to be safe. And then if you're doing 78 on a 75, you are the slowest car.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Here in Texas.
Yeah. You're getting passed.
I just I got friends in Germany, and one of these days I was there in 2019. I was asking how hard it was to get a driver's license in Germany, and then I just asked Grok here, right? So, and then they say the process of obtaining a first driver's license in Germany is significantly more rigorous and structured than in the U.S., involving more extensive education, training, and probatory controls. Below is a detailed comparison. So he puts a table. And man, the number of hours, you see, and they have the autobahns. They can drive at 200 miles an hour if they want it.
It's a free speed, yeah.
So
correct, but the issue is also Germany has strict driver's license laws. We don't have enforcement here in the United States for police officers. I mean, Austin passed a law. If you get pulled over, they can't ask you. Police officers can't ask for your license and registration. Right. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I personally have been hit twice, or once for my wife and once for me, by people without driver's licenses who don't speak English, who do not know the rules of the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's that's great for Germany that they have strict laws, but here in the United States there is a lot of non-speaking people here that do not have driver's licenses.
But there is maybe more if you consider the percentage of the population in Germany. I think probably there are more foreigners if you take into account percent-wise because of Syria, because of all the other Europeans going there.
Right.
So they have to.
And it's Europe, everything is close together, so everybody drives around.
If you were to say compare Germany to Texas,
okay,
for example.
Yeah, if you drive from here to Texas in Germany, you go from Germany to Sweden or something like that.
Texas is 2.5 times the size of Germany.
Right. Just
to put in perspective, with 2.5 times less population. Yeah. So Texas will have soon, maybe 100 years, 120 million people. Certainly 120 million people. So
sure.
Probably it's going to become more than one state because it's too big, or a country. That's my prediction. Okay, my prediction is this. And also have to remember that the American culture, the American industry, the American life is built on cars. So you need scale. You need everything is far. So you kind of you have to be more lenient, if you allow me to say that, in order to more people to drive. So yes, kids.
that
Yeah,
is true. That
public
is true.
transport is not as good as in Europe.
Right.
Yeah, you're right, George. And
Incentivize.
yeah.
Incentivize.
If you look at the bigger picture in Europe, because everything is more compact, right? Is the U.S. itself? If you know that data, I don't know. How big is the U.S. compared to the whole Europe? Like one country to multiple countries.
In terms of population, because of 4,000 years of of history, right? Of population, of course. If you put it all, depends on how you see it. Is that just the West? Do you want to consider the whole, the whole UAE, right? So it depends on how you do that. Population-wise, of course, 85 million in Germany, then 70 million in England. When you put it all together, of course, the population is high. It is higher, okay? But I think the number of people who drive, though,
Territorial.
territorial. The United States is the size. Again, it depends on how you divide Europe, But if you include Ukraine, for example, then of course Moscow. If you include that, then they would be way bigger.
That's such a hard question because like who the hell lives in Iowa? Like that's just a state that's just a bullshit state that you just fly over.
Don't
Kansas.
say that, man. It's America. Come on.
Yeah, but they're still bullshit state. We got 50 of them for fuck's sake.
They feed the world.
Yeah.
Iowa feed the world.
Iowa, yeah, okay.
Iowa feed the world.
Come on.
I'll do my part by not eating corn for a couple of days. Jesus Christ.
Come on.
I wanted to know your thoughts, honestly, George. Please chime in. But Hilton, as far as the Texas school voucher, allowing Texas residents to apply to different schools outside of their district.
I have something to say about that after you.
I don't know because I didn't know about this. So
basically, what the school voucher does is it allows your girls, if they decide that they don't want to go to that elementary school, they could apply and go to Linda Harrington, where my kids go. You would have to make that drive every morning, and they would have to go to school. But now they are not restricted to only go to schools in that district. They can go to other schools.
Somehow, it already happened by application, right? So because I've seen that happening before in my kids' school. I do not oppose to that. I think, but. One of the things that I really like about the district, right, is that you do create a good relationship with, the parents, and then the parents of the kids that your kids are creating relationship with, they are in your neighborhood, and I do like that. That's one of the things I do like a lot. And then when you go and say, okay, so now my kid is going to a 25 minutes drive to drop them to school. When there is a party or a get together, whatever it is, school related, for elementary school, it becomes you don't see those parents as often. But having said that, when it gets to middle school, already encompass a larger area anyways. So I don't oppose to that, but I do like the friendly neighborhood kind of thing. Having said that, it's gonna get schools that scores less, even less scoring, and maybe being somehow discommissioned, because no parents is gonna wanna put their kids in a school that is the score is 5 or 6, right? And either that school gets better, but the only way to get that better is towards funding. And to get funding, you gotta get a better neighborhood with a higher income in the households to be able to donate to the schools, because I see that a lot, and you see that a lot, right? Because you have kids. George doesn't, but the thing is,
I work with kids.
Yeah, you do work with kids, but
I spend more time with kids probably than you guys do.
No, yes. No. I'm not sure because I do with my kids, but
no, I know that, but you work you are out of home like 12, 14 hours and you sleep 8.
But you deal, yeah, we deal with kids, but you deal with kids that come into the U.S. kind of middle school and high school and
Yes.
university,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which already it has a larger area anyways to work with. So when it gets to elementary school, it's a very like kind of cozy environment, and I appreciate that a lot. I do. So. My problem is that low scoring schools, because they're in a neighborhood that people make less money, and that's what it is. Like, we're gonna have a fun run, right? So a fun run on a higher end neighborhood, the school collects so much money than a fun run on a school that is score 6 already.
But
So which means that if there is a person on that neighborhood that can now electively, apply for a higher school, they're gonna send their kids to that school, which means, yeah, their kids are gonna get better education, whatever it is, right? Because the school has more funds and pay better the teachers, so better teachers. But that school over there is just gonna get worse and worse. So I'm not sure. I have no idea. Data might say a little bit different, and I do not have access to that data.
Look, guys, there are so many angles that we can see this. I'm gonna just bring two. Look, I'm gonna defend an idea here on one side, and I know there are just as much as on the other side. Okay, I'm gonna see that socially and economically, right? So socially is the sense of community. So when you have people around, right? So you have this sense of community. I noticed that the kids, my friends, right? Everyone, it's kind of people that are going there. You kind of have more opportunities to be around. Okay. So
I can firsthand experience that from my kid's school. It's like the parents live down the street, their best friends live down the street. Oh, we're going to go to this, and this. Do you want us to pick up your kid? We'll all go together, whatever. So yeah, there is a tighter community because of that.
definitely. On the other hand, is less diversity. So kind of so that's what I'm saying. I won't bring those topics right now. Okay. So socially, I believe that's the experience works much better, I would say.
What do you mean diversity, though?
I disagree a little bit about diversity because we get people.
Because my kids are the minority. There's more Indian and
Yeah,
Asian
that's what I'm saying.
kids.
There's a lot of Asian kids that because their parents are in high pay industry,
Yeah.
right, tech industry, and so they end up being in a better neighborhoods anyway. So there's a
But
huge diversity.
But
But if you're
culturally,
talking about but if you're talking about black and whites and whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And then I would agree with you. So the diversity, it's just like that's why I think that should be a movement instead of doing that, a movement into getting better. Like okay, so this school is scoring 4, 5, 3, whatever it is. So let's then let's increase the amount of money that we share to that school to bring them up. Then, because I've changed my mindset recently a lot on, hey, because I do a lot of networking. So now I meet a lot of different people. And then I end up, hey, instead of saying, hey, man, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, right?
Right.
So am I flexing? Sorry. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that.
I know.
I did not mean that. Sorry. I'm sorry. I did not mean that. But instead of going like, hey, that person is not really bringing enough to the group. So I'm going like, hey, what can I do to make that person understand the importance of what it is to bring more to the group? So I'm trying to apply that mindset into. Okay, so there's a school that's a low scoring school. What can we do? Is that money only? Is that training? And what is it that is needed? And then work on the needs, to bring that school up to the standards so that people do not need to shop around. Do you know what I mean?
And that's hard. That's a very socioeconomic question to answer that situation, in my opinion. Because if you have a school in a blue collar part of town, most parents do not have the time or the means to provide that extra curricular activities after school.
Money wise and social wise,
And
right?
social wise.
I think it's more cultural because blue collars do make a lot of money, but they waste the money. Right? I know because I'm in the blue collar industry, and I pay a lot out to my subcontractors, but they are always like needing more money. So the education that they have themselves, but that's what I'm saying. It's like they live in neighborhoods that the schools may not be great, and so their kids are not being really well educated, and that bugs me a little bit because like, hey, how can we break that threshold, culturally?
But see, and I'm the mindset of a lot of the learning that does happen in school is instantly forgotten unless you have some type of presence knowledge wise at home. And I think George would agree with me at that. A household that encourages growth and learning is going to completely excel that kid, that child, if you encompass that. So a lot of it's going to come down to also just, what type of family is raising the child.
I understand, but that creates disparity. That really creates disparity. If your kid, because the kids bring, remember that you are the reflection of the 5 people that you are close with, like that.
Right.
Whatever it is, right, George? Or what does that say? It's 5 people that you more. It's like so you
You're a
are
reflection of like who you keep company with.
Yes.
Yes.
So and the number is like 5. So
Reflects a reflection of our entourage.
Yeah.
Right.
Entourage, right?
Right.
So if your kid is getting a great education, the kid brings that back to the house. The parents, they love their kids. It doesn't matter which level you are in life. They go like, oh, there's a different way of seeing it. And then, so that brings back, so it kind of creates a more, the environment changes a little bit because then the parents are around their children. So that's what I'm saying. If they go outside, so the kids are networking. So the kids are in school, right? So, and they are getting that more high level education. So it brings back home, and then the parent does not know how to deal with that. But then they go like, hey, I might need to learn something in here. I think there is a little bit of input from the kid coming back home and then saying something. Of course, if you are as a parent well educated, right? That it just combines. But if you have a kid that's really well educated and bringing back home some different view, so the parents might start changing a little bit because they are around their children. And the children is one of the 5. So it makes them better. So that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like improving the low scoring schools, the level of education helps the household as well as the households, what you said, includes. It's a generation kind of thing. So it's not going to happen immediately. It might take 3-4 generations, right? But it could happen. And it would happen because there is an investment on whatever it is that needs. Is either money, education, whatever it is, right? Teaching how to fish, not giving the fish.
Sorry, and I threw off your
No,
topic.
no, it's okay. Because that's the whole idea of a podcast. This is becoming a fantastic, episode, right? The thing is, looking from the side.
This is just a new segment.
Yes, looking from the side of the freedom, right? So philosophically, now mixing with the socially part, I would say that from the freedom perspective, technically there shouldn't be barriers. There shouldn't be barriers. However, to the point that you're saying, right, especially to the point that you mentioned, allowing and not allowing. I think the systems, they try to optimize the movement. So I remember that in 2002 here, I went to a great friend of mine who late Magro Lima, great guy. He was a victim of COVID. I love that guy. And I went to a lecture with him from Domenico De Masi, which is an Italian sociologist who lived in a super apartment, and then 3 floors below it's his company. And then he and then it goes to the second point, okay? And then he always talked about the weight of commuting. It doesn't make any sense. He even says, he argues that in post-industrial societies, about 70% of workers engage in intellectual tasks that can be performed remotely. So we have to understand that the relations changed. Education will change completely, man. The way we see it, we are discussing something here, but education is gonna take a turn that, it's think about with the Vision Pro, kids can touch a heart, like you won't. So and then connecting to the economical part that I was mentioning, which is commuting. How much does it cost? I know that because I studied in Brazil. I studied always, like my parents always let to the last minute to enroll. So no schools around us would have it. So we would have to go super further to, because of lack of preparation, as we spoke before in the podcast, right? So how much? I'm talking about billions. I'm talking about trillions of dollars wasted in the traffic jam. If you think traffic jam is bad, you see what happened when you allow people going everywhere. It's gonna be chaotic, So I think,
man, you put a point in there that I agree so much, because if you have families having to drive far to drop their kids to school, right? Nowadays that still happens because it's private schools, right? But it's not a huge number. But yeah, if you waste so much time in traffic because you gotta drop the kids at school, people are not gonna get into work at 8. They're gonna get into work at 8:20, 8:30, or something like that. Yeah, it does. It actually impacts the economy as well. So yeah, that is I do not agree.
No,
Is that it? Is that it?
I didn't mean to that. Okay,
that
so
is
I just
just an. It's answering the questions. I do not agree. I think
maybe so. Playing devil's advocate, so maybe going to school in a city setting, it would not be beneficial. But if you live in a rural area where you have 3 schools,
yeah, you already have to drive.
if you
and
already
then,
have
yes,
to drive, in which Texas is a very big state. Most of it, I mean, a big majority of it, people live outside of the city,
I want to believe that if I were the Secretary of Education, I would definitely be using algorithms to calculate for me, project 20 years in 150 scenarios. The machines can do that. Just check what the result would be and put all the variables, like if I can do a prompt that gives me great answer with free resources, imagine if I have a government with billions that could predict these things,
Well, when you think about it also is who's going to take that up? If you were to tell me, hey, Conrad, there's a school 15 minutes away and it's 10 out of 10. It's supposed to be the best school. You can enroll your kids in it. I'd still say no, because the school that my kids go to right now is right down the street. I can walk them to the street.
And in the school that your kids go is 10 out of 10.
Optimization of the structure that I mentioned. The freedom gives you this.
Right.
And then there's so much more to add to that, and it's like housing prices and everything else.
And that's
that
another
would
thing is that
equalize a little bit.
How are you going to tax it?
Again, that is data.
yes, and that's a valid point, because everything here in Texas is based off of ISD. If you live in a rich neighborhood, you're going to have the best schools because you're paying a buttload of money because of the ISD that you live in the independent school district. But now if your kid lives in Pflugerville with a lower lower tax rate, but they go up into Round Rock,
Mhm.
which has a higher tax rate, but they attend those schools, but you're paying Pflugerville taxes.
But that's what I'm saying. That's so, data. I do not have access to that in the thought behind of it. The same as in the podcast I mentioned quite a few times. So go back to the channel and watch the podcast. But data is something that we don't know what is behind it. Do they want the price of every single household to equalize because now it's not driven by the school score? So that could be the thing. So it would lower the price of the houses on a particular neighborhood and then rise the prices of another neighborhood because now that is not limited.
That could be a possibility. I mean, the freedom of choice also. The one thing that I looked at it as a positive is freedom of choice and the ability for someone from a low income area.
Which means you
that
can
is
buy a house anywhere.
But yes, you can buy. Okay,
Yeah,
but
then
in order to go to a good school, typically you have to buy a more expensive house because
in a particular neighborhood.
in a
And now
particular
that neighborhood of people that bought an expensive house just because of the area, location. Now
Yes.
it's not the location anymore because it's not important anymore.
It's not important.
I can see a strong pushback from the richest communities. There will be a very strong pushback.
There was, and they didn't care.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on Abbott's desk to sign into law, you know.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. It's like I pay high taxes so that I have the best schools, so that my kids can go there. Now you're telling me somebody from the inner city can drive 20 minutes and come here, and they pay $10,000 less in property taxes? Like, that's not fair. And that's
Yeah, I
about-
don't know. Look
There
at
is
that
a-
angle. If you think about being like a good citizen, it's like I agree with the rule. So instead of disagreeing, I can agree. But
in
you
my
know,
opinion, it is such a good and bad
yeah,
that you just have to try. You know?
Also, we forgot to mention about safety, right? So if whenever you have your community, you know all the cars, you know everyone that is in there. Once there's a variety of cars, you don't know, you know, you gotta have way more police around, patrols, you know, controlling, because you don't know so many different cars, so many different people coming. I don't know. This is also another point, but it's a very difficult discussion. It's a very, as I mentioned, I think there should be machines working on that with the algorithms, calculating that instead of I believe this is better, which I think it's basically what's happening. Okay, so from what I read, you know, like, oh, we believe that we have this data. Can I see the data? No, you can't see the data. Come on, man. If I can't see the data, so it's biased theory. You know, like I believe something and then I kind of pretend I use data to support what I already believed before.
and
you know?
and to bring up your point, I'm only bringing the news of like headlines, but there is. I mean, most of this stuff is coming off of data, you know. So for laws to be put into effect, like there is data that has to be presented to show, like, hey, where's the data? Where's the information? I don't have it, so I can't say.
No, I'm
yes
not
or
talking
no.
about you, right? There's nothing
Right.
right now. Nothing
Right.
about you. It's just about. You see that the thing is, they are politicians. You know, it doesn't matter if they believe something, if they have a preconcept of something, they will create data left and right. You know, they will create data to sustain what they believed.
Mhm.
You know, instead of doing the proper. You see, proper science is like this. Okay, let me show you. Let me show you publicly. Man, it's a big decision. It needs to be on TV, on radio, on TV. Hey, there will be a decision. No, you
But
don't
the
see.
you know, and I completely agree. But the problem with that is who has the time for it.
Yeah.
Put an hour in your time to listen to someone talk about all the new laws that they're trying to propose to,
Oh
George.
yeah, no, yeah.
You know, it's like, and you're absolutely right though. You know, it is so unfortunate that there's so many things that are happening. They're like, oh no, trust me, I got the data. I did all the research, and you're like, where is it? They're like, oh, well, you missed that. That was like 2 weeks ago. You'll have to go look for it yourself now.
Like yeah.
You know.
Anyway, so this it's a very hard decision, especially economically and socially here. I would say that those are the main issues against it. right?
I will say that Texas isn't the first state to implement it. I know Florida has, Oklahoma has, and a couple other states have implemented the free choice of school. I think it would be an interesting argument to see how well they're doing with the choice of letting the parents choose which school their children are able to go to.
Because if it's Miami and LA, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no!
It's still a
You
lot of.
you spoke about Texas driving badly. If you go to LA, if you go to Miami, then you
But it's
see
still-
what is driving badly is.
Yeah,
you
the
know?
decision is still gonna be like, hey, that school is too far away. I'm better off just leaving my kids over here, and then
Right.
because yes,
the market, the system to optimizing what it is. So Demasi suggests that you should leave. You should live and study 2 miles, 2 kilometers from your place. And then you
1
could-
mile, 1.3 miles.
Yeah. So yeah, and then if you see you have like connectivity inside, and which Americans do, right? So which is around. You can go to different places around. I understand his point. It makes sense for a city to work. But then what happens to experiments? Trying something different. You're gonna see you're always gonna see the same people the whole time. We already kind of do that. But then it's going to force this. It's philosophical because it's going to force us more inside instead of outside. So I don't know. There are so many points to put it out.
So many variables to this. It's like, could it be a good or bad thing? It's like, we don't know. We really don't know.
Well, rules. I mean, to be honest with you, the free choice. In the end of the day, decision is going to be made by the parents if they can afford or not. But I see house prices changing a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Even
and when you have a country that relies a lot on house prices as investment, like the U.S., everything narrows down to housing, right? Investment. This is my retirement home, or this is my retirement income, or something like that. So may give more opportunity to some people, like in the blue collar sector, to have their kids going to a little better school, because normally they have the tendency to live in neighborhoods that is cheaper to live in because they don't know how to manage their money. But then the kids can go to a different, although the school has to accept.
That is true. Yeah, I don't, and again, I don't know, like
internal
it's-
policies that will,
Yeah.
especially those rich communities. You see, like we have a
We're
strict.
full.
Yeah, we're full all of a sudden. Exactly. So
Every action has a reaction, and
For sure.
I say that all the time.
No.
So you put an action out there, there's going to be a reaction, and every reaction is, in fact, an action that generates a reaction. Until that trends or that chain stops by somebody like, okay, let me not react to this, right? So I don't know, because it could, that could pass and then go like, it's not going to change anything because we're not going to accept, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then we just like, hey, okay, what is your address? You have to fill it up, the application. And then you go like, oh, I'm afraid your kid was not accepted because whatever it is, we already reached the number that kids that we can take. And they took everybody that's around them. I don't know.
Yeah.
so
I don't
many
know.
criteria that can be used, to protect whatever you have. But before we go,
Okay.
I would just want to say one thing.
It's going long.
That-
This
yeah, this-
news segment
this
is
news
going a little
segment's
long.
a podcast.
It's
Yes,
a podcast
yes.
now.
One thing, we have one of the most incredible plays in the NBA in history this week.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Um,
Oh yeah, I saw you sent.
Jokic,
Yeah.
Jokic, they would just lose the game, or they would tie the game. They would lose the game, and then Jokic try like from very far, like I think almost half court,
Yeah.
being blocked by 3 players, and he would air. It would be an air ball, and then in the it was 1,000th of a second that Gordon touched the ball, And
And
it was
let it
like
go, and the ball
4
dropped.
minutes. It was like a 4-minute decision, 5-minute decision, and then it was, it was considered that he scored it within the time. But they had to look from so many angles.
Okay.
And then there was only one angle that that's definitely the angle. That
He
was
let
right.
the ball go.
But it was
Just
like
let
just
it,
a
yeah.
because he held the ball and then he dropped it, so they couldn't see exactly the right millisecond that the ball left the hand. So it was one of the most incredible. And this playoffs, in these playoffs, we had like at least 10 games with this kind of ending. So I love it. And
It can only be done this age because of technology, right? The rise and
I don't know
For
how
sure.
exactly in the
back in the 90s.
Yeah,
and,
that would be too
that
hard.
doesn't count.
I just want to make. There's so many things about the NBA, but this one I had to say it. It was absolutely incredible.
It was
Yeah,
cool.
awesome.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining Conrad's news segment. I hope you learned something. This was definitely a very thought-provoking. I'm not even gonna call it a segment. This was Conrad's news
It was
podcast.
It was almost a podcast. Yeah.
But it was fun. It was a lot of great topics, very interesting points, and I hope you came away with a little bit more knowledge about current events and things that are going to be happening. Stay tuned for next week, and give me a like.
Subscribe.
And comment.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.